Hello, everyone. How are we doing this evening? Hello, 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 hello. Hopefully, all is well. Do have a little bit of a different schedule here. Awesome. Since we did have bank holiday, right? Labor Day yesterday. Well, technically still today. Sorry about that. Um, I decided to move the outlook to tonight. And as well, we do have. Oh, sorry. I am just noticing something. Hello, hello, hello. Did I lose these perks? Server boost? Hello. Oh, I do have some server boost to figure out. Sorry about that, by the way. But as I was saying, there was a bank holiday, and it is also the start of September. So our monthly statistical outlook is here. So instead of starting on our charts, actually, let's go ahead and start right on Rise Statistics. Why not? Can you guys confirm that in Discord you guys can see Rise Statistics at the moment? Awesome. Well, first of all, I like to always start on seasonality, right? It is just such a powerful tool in my book, understanding how the markets usually reacts in those specific times of the year. It's also important to point out, and we can see it here with a nice visual help, we are entering the final, almost entering, the final quarter of the year, right? September is a very pivotal month. We are getting out of the low volume time of the summer. As you can see, it is often just a second power of 3. What do I mean by this? Well, if we understand how a candle forms, we understand it forms from open, and then it goes to form a high or a low, and then expands to its opposite extreme, right? This is the specific structure, the specific order we are looking for. And as we can see here, after a nice yearly power of 3, we can now see that September initiates a new one. Also, of course, we have contract expiry near the middle of September, right? September 15th, right here. So we understand that it is a very pivotal month where the trend for that month will dictate what the next months will do. So that's what I'm going to be looking for specifically. I'm going to be looking for September to keep on our little drive lower, so that when October starts, we are ready to run higher. Now, until the 15th of September, right? Until contracts switch. And of course, in the monthly outlook, before then, in the weekly outlook, before then, I'll definitely speak on it. I personally will be out. I'm heading to Vegas from the 10th to the 15th. So I'll be back just in time for the contract switch, and the live events will resume at that point. I did want to mention it here, but I will make an announcement about it a little closer to the date of my departure. Overall, just saying, I want to see price follow seasonality, and whether we look at all-time seasonality, 5-year, 15-year, 10-year, we see consolidation going into a slow drive lower, right? This is the same thing that we see in the last 5 years. We see a little bit more of a bearish pattern, and if we look at the month of August in the last 5 years, it's been actually bullish. And then we see our drive lower going into September, which is a little bit of a delay compared to the other ones. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. And why do we always compare NASDAQ and ES? Because we look for initial divergence. Now, in this case, there is no divergence until we get into October. This is where the divergence get. We often see, if we look at the all-time seasonality here, we often see the low formed of this last quarter, right? Of this last third of the year, I should say, formed in October for ES, but formed in September for NASDAQ. Or, if we look at the all-time seasonality, early September here forms an equal low, which forms SMT. So that's what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be looking for a slow drive lower to prepare ourselves for the last quarter of the year. Of course, what does that mean? That means a lot more scalps, a lot more intra-week trades. I'm going to be looking less for a long-term trend and more for clear price action. Now, if we head over to the monthly ranges specifically here, we'll notice that for the month of September, we have a pretty split bullish and bearish. Why? Because it's often attributed as a consolidation month, a little bit like August is, but we see a little bit of a larger range, and as we can see, pretty trending price action. Why do I say this? Because we tend to see a much smaller manipulation than distribution. What does that mean overall? Well, pretty straightforward. We see nice trending movement once we get done with the manipulation, and we see here at more than 80% of the range is formed from the distribution, which is what we like to see. We like to see clear trending frameworks, right? And for the monthly candle, this is what we want to see. Now, if we head over to the extremes, this is where we get a little bit more confusing data, I guess, is how we can put it. It is no clear frameworks we can look for because as we can see just from this pie chart here, as well as the distribution chart, pretty spread out as per the highs. And if we look at the lows, very, very similar, but with an extremely high probability for week one, right? So of course, we tend to see a bullish trending month, or if we're going to see a bearish month, here we can go here. If we see a bullish month, we tend to see a pretty trending month with an early low formed and a later high formed with, of course, a big retracement. So we very rarely see the high on week 5. But if we look at bearish here, we're going to see something a little similar. But if we are going to be bearish, we tend to see the low formed quite later in the month, right? Towards the end of the month right here. So once again, looking for a trending month, and I'm going to be prioritizing bearish price action. We can also go a little bit deeper and filter using the previous entry. So for example, the previous month, did we actually close bearish? I think we did not get to close bearish, but barely, we could have. Yeah, so a very small bullish candle. I was heading on my chart to see it, but don't worry, you guys will see it in a second. So we had a bullish month and it took the previous high. Does this give us any sort of additional confirmation? Well, yes. All of a sudden, when we had a bullish August, right? Because we're filtering using the previous entry, what does that mean? Filter based on the properties of the previous time period. So in this case, since we're looking at September only, we're saying, what if the previous month, so August, was bullish and rated the high of the previous month, right? So had a high raid. Well, in this case, we have 9 instances where out of those 9 months, 6 of them ended up bearish. So 6 of the times where September followed this specific pattern of August, we had a bearish September. This is very interesting data. Also, very nice to see is that 44% of the time we fully reversed a month, right? So even though August closed bullish, we fully reversed and went to target August's lows, and we have a very high probability of reaching August's high. But if we close bullish, that is a given because we are going to close usually near those highs. This is not the case this time, so we'll look at it for sure. As we can see here, we had our monthly high probabilities, right? We saw, on a raid, this is where I was trying to go. We see that we have a very high probability of reading the highs. And overall, 85% of the time, this happens at week 1 with a very small 15%. So one time happening during week 2. So if we are going to be looking for a high rate, we'd like to see this exact week, the first week of September, to be very bullish and reach those highs. And in that case, we can also have a very nice confidence that we should see a bearish month. As per the low, slightly lower probability, right? Of course, 44% is usually not a framework I like to trade. But if we see displacement towards these lows, they will definitely be a great objective. As we can see, we don't really have very nice data because the 4 times that it happened, they were split up between which week they occurred, with the exception of week 4. So that is definitely something quite interesting in that sense. But overall, the low monthly lows are low probability, while monthly highs are quite high probability. So some pretty nice stuff going on here on Rice Statistics. But if we switch back over to a trading view here, we can now see how we could utilize these probabilities. Let me remove the drawings. This right here is a monthly chart just so we can clearly see the previous candle. As we can see, we pretty much opened in the 50% of that range, right? If we look right here, actually, here, I don't know why I drew this. I actually have a template for this. Just a nice little fib. we open very near to the midpoint of the month of August. So if we are to see our bullish movement of the week one, right, we have a 2.5 almost percent movement that we want to be seeing. That's a 600 handle move. That is easily doable during the week of NFP, like we see this week, right? And especially where Monday was a bank holiday, right? Today, we have much less time to do a big move because we are looking for it to move. Also important to point out, once again, contract expiry. That is definitely going to be interesting to see. But I'm going to be sticking to that idea with the probabilities telling me, hey, there's 78% chance we go to this high and only 44% chance we go to this low. So what is going to be my bias for the start of the month until we reach this level? Well, bullish, right? This is what trading with probabilities does for you. They take off the need to try and understand what is going on, and now all of a sudden I have a very clear bias. And once again, giving me an opportunity to showcase our indicators, well, I don't even need to think. I can just open up my candle ranges and see previous month high, previous month low. Also, I like to bring in the abbreviation sometimes just to make it a little bit cleaner when I'm trading, right? When we review, it's kind of nice to see the full name though. Just a nice opportunity to showcase right statistics and the indicators. Sorry if I'm boring you guys that have already seen them 1,000 times. But very clearly, I'm going to be looking for previous month high. Now, one thing that helps me with this idea is that since we opened this week, right, this is the candle of the half day of trading that we saw, we actually formed SMT on the lows. Now, of course, if we're zoomed out like this, it doesn't really, we can't really see it well. You can draw a line and then zoom in, but what I prefer to do is use these values. This is why I have them on my chart. If I look at the low of this candle, it's going to be right here where we see the L. I see 23,370.5, and right here we have 23,371.5. So yes, it only traded under by 1 point, one handle if you prefer, but that is plenty to define SMT. So now what I'm seeing is that we retrace into a premium of that range, invalidating a premium array. This was pretty much an equilibrium array, right? It was pretty much at the midpoint. So not exactly a premium array, but we did trade all the way up here. Now, it's also important to point out that we traded all the way to our actual premium array as well and are respecting it. So now this tells me I'm bearish. This tells me I could be bullish. This tells me I could be bullish. What do I do in times like these where I have no clue where it can go? Well, I'll use the weekly structure. This is why, sorry about that, guys. I just ate. This is why I like to have my weekly open on my chart. Now, of course, Tuesday's candle, which is actually Monday's candle, doesn't give me much insight until we get further on in trading Tuesday. Why? Because it was a bank holiday. It's a half trading day. I disregard it until I see more price action from Tuesday specifically. So, of course, I'll use the daily structure. I'll use my intraday range frameworks. We've already discussed these quite at length. And if you're still unfamiliar, you can head over to the resources channel in this Discord, and you'll find a long PA review where we actually hopped on right statistics to explain those frameworks. But that's what I'm going to be focusing on early on in the week, looking for trending price action, hopefully upwards. And of course, now we have a lot of ranges in play, right? I'm always looking at premium and discount and first premium, first discount and efficiencies. In the case of this bullish range that we formed, our first discount and efficiency was right here, right? Sweeping this low as well into this bullish order block. Now we traded into here and are respecting it. What does this tell me? Well, it tells me that we're pretty bullish, but we have to respect it. And just like I talked about the SMT at the highs, right, which is also something we need to point out, where we were looking at the data for NASDAQ earlier, that it has an almost 80% chance of reaching the highs, but ES already has. Now, there's a lot of different factors here. So what am I going to focus on? Well, I'm going to look for a confirmation of either direction. For example, right here, I have a bullish confirmation. But for me to actually trust this, I need to see the next candle over because I need price to form a swing. And this is what I meant when I said, just like when we discussed about SMT, I need to look for a swing and a confirmation, and I can then trade that move to go higher with, of course, clear objectives at previous week's high and previous month's high. Let me actually bring these in, and let's just do 1 week so we can see the previous weekly high and low. And it has not updated yet because it does not recognize yet that this is a weekly open. We'll see that happen in 40 minutes. Well, just in case you guys were wondering why it showcases the one from the previous week still. But we also have this range. Now, this range is not a range I will use to trade or often get bias. Why? Because it's a 3-candle range from a daily chart. But this is where I can go to a lower time frame and actually get an early confirmation or opposite signal to my bias. Like, for example, here, I can see that this is my premium array. Now, if I'm bullish, I want to see this premium array traded to and through, right? I want to see it invalidated. So this will be my confirmation to look for this. So if we see a 4-hour close above this level, it's going to be a bullish confirmation. Of course, I will not stop myself from taking longs before then. But if we fail to reach these levels, then it's very clear what's going on, and we are simply just bearish, and we are going to look for a continuation lower, hopefully leaving previous month's low open, because if we take this, there is not a lot to stop us in this case. We could definitely see a very nice bearish month, perhaps taking this, but hopefully not. We can form some form of SMT maybe with NASDAQ taking it and ES leaving it open. And then we can have our October, November, and December have our nice run higher. We discussed a lot of things right now. There's a lot of information that has been spewed towards you guys. So now let's refocus, not on the possibilities of the month, but specifically this week, right? What am I looking for this week? I'm simply looking for confirmation. I have my levels. I have this order block, this SMT that I want to see confirmed with another candle, and I have my 4-hour premium array that will give me a confirmation. So if we close above this, then all of a sudden I have a very clear framework of 350 handles with previous week's high and previous month's high above. If we reach it and fail to close through it, then I have a very clear framework of the opposite direction where I'm going to be targeting a retracement to that order block, and as well going deeper within that order block to the mean threshold. And if we show that we are closing through these levels, then of course, once again, I have more liquidity below that I can look to target. Of course, throughout the week, with ES this much more bullish than NASDAQ, we're going to see a lot of higher time frame divergence. I do want to remind you guys that for me to consider higher time frame SMT, I need to wait for it to be confirmed, right? Just like right here. I'll give the example here. I don't think I've ever showcased it with the live example, but at the point where ES, let me just actually mark it out. It is technically this high. Right here, when ES takes out that high, well, actually it took it a little bit before, so let's just look at the high from, what is that, the 15th? So it's kind of like if I was looking at something like this, all right? So there is no SMT when it takes it, right? So at this point, I wouldn't say there's SMT, neither at this point. But at this point, we've had this candle close and this candle close, which tells me this is now a swing high. So from this point on, this is valid SMT, right? So we have ideas to go short. We have ideas to go long. What is going to confirm this? The 2 first trading days of the week. I'm going to look for structure. As we said, I'm looking for a trending week no matter what, right? So just like last week, this is a bearish trending week. And then we have a bullish trending week that I can't finish drawing. But I'm looking for one of these two patterns. Now, we've already had the start of a pattern here with price trading lower, forming SMT. That gives me a great indication of this first leg. That is what I'm going to be looking for. If we fail to close above this, of course, I'm not going to be looking for this. I'm going to understand that, hey, we're actually here. All we had to do before was this, right? So these are the two frameworks that we could see this week. Definitely going to be excited to see where we move forward. Of course, with all the PA reviews that we're going to have this week, right? Since we all have trading days except for Wednesday, I'm still going to be trading half risk, but that won't be a price action review. So we're going to have tomorrow, we're going to have Thursday and Friday. I'm going to have plenty of opportunity to talk more to you guys and to explain what I'm going to be looking for and specifically how these frameworks developed. I'm going to give you guys an opportunity to ask for some questions. NJ, I don't want to flood this weekly outlook with specifics about intraday trading, but if you remember that question and you ask me tomorrow night for the price action review, I'd be more than happy to go over it. Hello, 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 hello. My pleasure, my pleasure. Do we have any other questions before we call it a night here? Hello, 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 hello. It seems pretty clear. I'm going to wish you all a great rest of your day, depending on where you are, what time is it. But for me, it is early evening, so I'm going to wish you all a great time. Good luck trading tomorrow, and we'll see each other multiple times this week, but for the first time tomorrow night for our price action review. Have a great one, guys. Good luck.